Of course, the Vietnam War had begun to heat up by this time, and the government's insistence on lying about everything connected with the war had begun to erode the social fabric of the U.S. Systematic lying creates what communication scientists call a disinformation situation, in which everybody eventually begins to distrust, demonize, and diabolize everybody else. Paul Václavic, among others, has performed classic experiments in which totally sane people will begin to behave with all the irrationality of hospitalized paranoids or schizophrenics just because they have been lied to in a calculated and systematic way. This sort of disinformation matrix is so typical of many aspects of our society, e.g. advertising and organized religion as well as government, that some psychiatrists, such as R.D. Laing, claim it is the principal cause of psychotic breakdowns. When the politics of lying becomes normal, paranoia and alienation become the normality of the day. The government, as the principal liar of the 1960s, was, of course, more deluded than anyone else, since its reality map had become a classic disinformation system. The establishment began looking around for the villains to blame for the escalating social disintegration. Tim Leary got elected by unanimous acclaim, villain number one. The war on drugs, i.e. a war on research, began. That is to say, it was called the war on drugs, but the total effect of all the hysteria and witch hunting was that the number of drug users steadily escalated each year, especially among the young, the ignorant, and the ill-prepared, with predictably uninspiring results. The only experiments that were stopped were those by intelligent scientists who were beginning to learn something new about the nervous system when they were ordered to desist. Ironically, but typically, Dr. Leary, who had warned all about all this in his Senate testimony in 1966, was blamed for it by the same government that caused it to happen. Here's some of Dr. Leary's 1966 Senate testimony. Senator Edward Kennedy, you feel that there ought to be control over at least importation. Dr. Leary, the sale, manufacture, or distribution, yes. Kennedy, you have testified. Now, why do you think they should be? Leary, I feel that activity, particularly commercial activities involving the manufacture, sale, and distribution of these substances, should be controlled, because you do not know about quality, you do not know about safety, you do not know what you're buying. Obviously, you have to have laws, just as you have laws about the amphetamines. Kennedy, you said you do not know about the quality. What is it about the quality that you're frightened about? Leary, we do not want amateur or black market sale or distribution of LSD. Kennedy, why not? Leary, or the barbiturates or liquor. When you buy a bottle of liquor, Kennedy, this is not responsive. As to LSD, why do you not want the indiscriminate manufacture and distribution? Is it because it is dangerous? Leary, because you do not know what you are getting. Kennedy, is it because it is dangerous? And so on. Leary continually tried to point out the horrible black market that would be created by across-the-board criminalization of LSD, and Kennedy continually heckled him and tried to trip him into an incriminating admission. The government went ahead and illegalized LSD research. The black market sprang up on the nationwide scale almost immediately. Nobody knew what they were buying, and bad trips multiplied horrendously, especially among those who had the bad fortune to be arrested during the moments of imprint vulnerability, in which case they quite naturally imprinted helplessness, terror, and paranoia. The same results were obtained in the CIA's clandestine experiments, in which the subjects did not know what was being done to them. Those who began to suspect correctly that they were being experimented upon by persons who were lying to them also imprinted paranoia. All of this could have been prevented if Leary's work on set, setting, and dosage had been correctly understood. Alas, Leary's ideas never did get across in the mass media. There he was portrayed as a madman who wanted everybody to take LSD, and later as the criminal genius behind the black market, which he had tried so hard to prevent. Nor was it ever publicized that in Leary's research with LSD there had been exactly 0 bad trips, 0 psychotic breaks, 0 suicides. Multiple realities. One of the writers in the Playboy promotion department was taking a trip every weekend on something his black market dealer told him was LSD. Real LSD was illegal by then. One day this writer, whom we shall call Joseph K., told me that he had received telepathic messages from outer space on several of his recent trips. The materialist did not perfectly hide his instant skepticism, and Joseph K. clammed up immediately. We never heard another word from him on that subject, and he later quit Playboy and went off to try to write in Hollywood. At that time, I had put all that mystical stuff behind me and was playing the game of urbane, sophisticated, successful Playboy editor. Weirdness was something that, like poverty, only happened to other people. I was targeted directly at hedonic gratification, mostly due to a new drug that had ended my life, the seductive lady known as Maria Juana, goddess of sex, rapture, and doing your own thing. By the time of the Democratic Convention horrors of 1968, the materialist was smoking pot fairly regularly, like everybody else in Playboy's editorial department and at every other magazine we knew, and throughout the communications industry. One night, the hedonic materialist was happily spaced out on the weed and alone at home. The kids were asleep, and Arlen, paradoxical for a Playboy editor's wife, was out at a women's liberation meeting. I abruptly made a neurological discovery. Most of the phenomena of self-hypnosis are quite easily replicable on grass without the tedious training involved in ordinary hypnosis. Instead of being an unplanned voyage into unexpected sensory thrills, pot became a deliberate program of sensory enrichment. One could turn music into colors, into caresses, into tastes. One could grow to gigantic size or shrink down inside one's own cells and molecules. One could tune one's nervous system like a combination microscope TV set. Several extraordinary months of experiments soon revealed that one could do much of this without pot, although it remained easier with pot, of course. The shaken materialist began at long last to understand what Freud meant by projection and Buddha by Maya. It became clear as vodka that whatever reality means philosophically, our everyday experience, the common-sense definition of reality, is almost entirely self-programmed. This cinematic editing occurs so rapidly that we're normally not aware of doing it. Thus we add many things that aren't there at all, Freud's projection, and leave out millions of things that are there, Freud's censorship. Confusing the finished product with an accurate reflection of externality is exactly what Buddha meant when he said normal consciousness is delusion, Maya. One soon discovered that pot could be a tool by which one might adjust the nervous system as casually as one adjusts the picture on a TV set. I had achieved what the semanticist Korzybski calls consciousness of abstracting, awareness of the usually unconscious mechanism by which each of us makes the world over in his/her own image. The neurologician now took up yoga, quite unmystically and with hardly a grain of piety. I understood that yogic training, whatever else it might comprise, is a method of freeing the nervous system from conditioned perception. Combining pot and yoga, I quickly demonstrated to myself by direct experience that the nervous system can be freed from virtually every perception and reflex that makes up our ordinary spectrum of possibility. Our old friend Alan Watts, a most skeptical theologian and experimental mystic, was doing similar research in those years and coming to similar conclusions. During one of his visits to Chicago, he said to another Playboy editor, "But my dear man, reality is only a Rorschach inkblot, you know." Alas, to those who haven't done the research personally on the neurological level, this is hardly comprehensible. The editor remained cynical. Later, Paul Krasner, editor of The Realist, put the same thought more colorfully. Reality is silly putty. Those without direct experience could not understand. They quickly concluded that a certain segment of the intelligentsia was going mad. This is why potheads develop a certain inevitable alienation from society. They begin to feel like one-eyed men in the kingdom of the blind. The Murder of Christ, a rerun.